Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. And today, for those of you that have missed the ways of brawling and have been most disappointed in the direction that the game is going, we are going to do our best in helping you guys out in scratching that brawling itch. Besides, of course, just playing the game mode or airship escort. We're going over tips and tricks and a general guide on how to brawl in 2023 in this game, despite what the meta has become. We're going to do our best to give the meta the middle finger and make our own fate today. Now, do keep in mind this is just a general guide, and of course, with how the game goes, there's just situations where it won't happen. Because as I'm sure most of you guys know, the game a lot of times will stick around 15, 16 kilometers, the engagement range at higher tier, and just stay there for most of the match. But we're going to talk about the situations that you can take advantage of and how to best take advantage of them. Before we get going, this is the week of Carrier Con, taking a place aboard the USS Hornet in Alameda. I will be there in person to take part in one of their panels. They invited me out, and it's happening 2 days from now. Well, 3 days from now. Yeah, 3 days from now from when this video goes live. So if you guys want to see IRL Sea Lord, head on out to CarrierCon aboard the Hornet in Alameda, in California. It's in the Bay Area for those of you that are unfamiliar with that, and you can see me there IRL. Okay, so I've broken this up into three categories, at the time of recording at least. Might be more, but we'll see how this goes. First one is, of course, ship selection. What ship do you want to take, or should you take when it comes time to brawl? Or if you go out with the intention of brawling, I should say. Well, the truth of the matter is, of course, any ship can brawl. Any ship can get in close, do brawling things, punch the other guy in the teeth. But in today's World of Warships, if you really want to make the most of it and have the best chance of becoming successful at it, you kind of need to take a ship that is geared specifically for it. Again, if you do get in a close range fight in any ship, these tips and tricks will of course help you out either way. But in my opinion and in my suggestion, you're going to typically want something, of course, German. The battleships or the battle cruisers, both lines are great for brawling if you could get into that particular situation. The main line, the Bismarck, FDG, and Preußen line, those guys can still get it done today, although in general, a main battery build will also work on those guys when we get to the build section, and they can still do what we're going to talk about doing. But of course, you want to throw a secondary build on there. Getting a little bit ahead of myself there, but they can still hang in there. The battle cruisers are, of course, super well designed for brawling. They have a large number of secondary guns. They are very fast, stealthy. They have torpedoes, hydro, and the quick damage con. Other ships that are good at brawling too, some other premium ships that are, Massachusetts, Ohio, Georgia. Those three ships are probably the three best American ships for brawling. Again, there's other ships too, like the Alsace and the French line. She has pretty good armor for it. She's quick. Her 50-inch guns hit quite hard. And if you want to dump points into it, her secondaries can get a little bit spicy, but nothing too special. Just, going to survivability if we're talking about the Alsace there. But those are some of the best ships in the game for brawling. Again, my recommendation if you want to go down the tech line, German battleships or battle cruisers. Probably the battle cruisers would be best in today's meta. The Grosser Kurfürst is still, in my opinion, one of the best battleships for brawling. It's also the one I have the most experience in. It's probably going to be in most of the footage you're watching in the background. Pommern's great for it. Brandenburg's great for it. Of course, you want to pick those premiums up as well. Again, anything can brawl, but those are the ships that are going to stand out and above the rest of the crowd. And these ships, too, also have something that you can take most advantage of, and that is the Commander Lutyens. Lutyens is going to be definitely a go-to commander if you have the German ships. If you've got multiple German premiums, like I just listed, Pommern, Brandenburg, GK, he's great. You can move him around between those ships at no retraining cost whatsoever because those are premium ships. Alright, so that's enough preaching about Lutyens. Let's talk about the builds themselves. So there's three builds that I would recommend on these ships, depending upon which one you are playing. let's start with the mainline German battleships, including the GK. So the first one I would recommend if you're going for a brawling mentality is the secondary build. So the secondary build involves you putting, well, this build on your ship. I'll pop up the module and commander build on screen right now. So the secondary build is, in my opinion, the best one if you are going into a match trying to brawl. One, because unlike the main battery gun build, you're going to be closer to the target and dispersion won't really matter that much. Two, secondaries provide a lot of passive damage income on these ships. Remember that most of these ships, especially when you start getting up to the higher tier ones, can overmatch 32 millimeters of armor. Well, can pin 32 millimeters of armor with their secondaries. So you'll have a lot of pin damage coming in due to the high volume of gunfire, along with the main battery guns as well, and they'll be setting quite a few fires. It's not uncommon that secondaries, on especially the way I play GK, outpace the main battery guns in terms of damage, again, especially if you're using Lucians. So why these skills? So first one, preventive maintenance. You want to keep your main battery guns in the fight for as long as possible. The second one, on the GK at least, I do take the grease the gears skill, because when you do get in close, you need your turrets to be as fast as possible in their rotation. Then of course you want to take the secondary skills to boost the performance of the secondary guns. Adrenaline rush, because, well, taking damage and getting something in return is a sweet deal. Then of course the, well, kind of neutered superintendent skill that gives you another charge of a heal, because more HP is, well, more HP. Now, coming down to the last 4-point skill, concealment expert or fire prevention. My ideology is that if I'm in a brawling situation, I'm going to be spotted anyway. So why bother getting my concealment down any further? Plus, I'm in something like a GK or a Preußen or an FDG or a Bismarck, and the detection range of those ships are still massive. Well, the Bismarck's actually not that bad, but again, you can change it if you want to. I'd rather have fire prevention, because I'm going to be set on fire all the time, because I'm going to be spotted by DDs, submarines, and CVs, and I'd rather only have 3 fires maximum, with the decreased chance of getting set on fire that this skill provides. Now, if you want to go ahead and slot the concealment expert on there, be my guest. Again, on like the Bismarck, that'll work, and on the Schlieffen, that'll work too, and the Ruprecht. But for the mainline, this is what I would recommend. It's just what's worked for me in the past 5-6 years of playing this game, and it still works today. Now, the other build that I would recommend for the main line, not the GK, would be, of course, the main battery gun build. Main battery gun build, you build into the tankiness of the ship, which these are German battleships. They are very tanky, so it makes sense there. And of course, with something like the Ohio, the Georgia, or the Massachusetts, especially the Massachusetts and the Ohio, those ships are pretty tough in their own right through their improved heals, and their armor schemes are generally good enough to hang in there. Georgia, the armor's not really there, so building into the survivability would also help out as well. But if you want to build into the secondaries, Massachusetts, Ohio, and Georgia do have some very, very rapid-firing HE secondaries, so it can work out well for those as well. So I do typically run secondary build on those ships as well, but the module's a little bit different. With the Ohio and the Georgia, they can fit the Artillery Platinum Mod 2 mod in the module slot, so that is what I would recommend for those battleships. That gives you another 11% boost to your main battery guns, and again, typically by then the rate of fire on the Ohio, Massachusetts, and Georgia is so high because of just the nature of their secondaries that typically, you know, is good enough at that point. If you want to go full secondary build into them, be my guest, but that's what I would recommend. So the main battery gun build, if you want to put that on like the Preußen and the FDG and the Bismarck, you will be putting a lot of shells down range, and that does help make up for the lack of accuracy of the main battery guns. If you want to brawl, it can help as well, because it will be building to the tankiness of the ship, and you will have very rapid firing main battery guns, or very accurate main battery guns when it comes to brawling, depending upon if you want to take the reload module in the last slot, which I would definitely recommend if you're going for a main battery build. But that's just my mindset for the main line. For the battlecruiser line, you typically want to go with the secondary build too, but I would definitely recommend, in the case of the battlecruiser line, getting rid of fire prevention and taking the concealment, because with the Schlieffen and I believe the Ruprecht too, you can get your detection range down to essentially your detection range essentially down to your secondary range, so that when you are spotted by an enemy ship, they're in your secondary range, and once, if it's like a DD, once they're spotted, well, you've got a ton of secondaries and they're all ready to shoot them, and it is glorious. Same applies to any cruiser battleship that enters your detection range. It's also a very nice strategy to use to spot them, get them spotted, let your secondaries shoot at them, and they'll run away from you and exit your secondary range without you firing your main battery guns, and now, well, they're out of your detection range and you have gone undetected. You can get away with some pretty nice goofy antics with this build on the battle cruisers, but that's what I would recommend build-wise. So moving on to the tactics now. Probably the most important part, the proper ship and the proper commander build will only get you so far. You need to know how to make this work in today's World of Warships. So my biggest pieces of advice. First off, wait at the start of the match. There's a couple things you need to take into consideration. Don't just W key and go for whatever flank you are on. Take a second, look at that little thing in the corner of your screen, the right hand corner, called a minimap. Two things you need to look for. 1, island cover. 2, your teammates. Island cover is going to allow you and your giant battleship to go undetected and to not get shot by everyone on the enemy team. You can take cover behind it, can break line of sight, make you go undetected. Plus, if you can actually push on that side, you can hop from island to island, get a nice little break, pop your heal, pop your damage con, rather than just being consistently crapped on by the enemy team. That's typically what you want to do, because when you get spotted playing these ships I've recommended, the German battleships, battle cruisers, Massachusetts, Ohio, and Georgia, you're a giant target, especially with these builds without the concealment mod. Again, if you take that, without the concealment skill, that's up to you. You're going to have a bad time. So anything that can help you break line of sight without you having to fall back is a plus. But secondly, the team. You got to see where the team is going, both your team and the enemy team. Now, of course, if it's a CV game, you know where the enemy team is going pretty early, but if it's not, and you are incredibly lucky, that might be something you can't really take into account at the beginning of the match. But you can definitely see where your teammates are going, and you need to go with them. If someone is going out by themselves and the entire rest of the friendly team has decided to go in the opposite direction, yes, it sucks, but you kind of have to join the lemming in today's World of Warships, because that one guy that went out by himself, the CV is going to go after him, the submarine is going to go after him. Trust me, I sympathize with that guy. I try as much as I can to help that one guy out most of the times, but in today's World of Warships, 2 ships alone just apparently isn't enough to be effective. But if you got a nice little group going, and it's not with the herd, 3 ships, you can be the 4th. That's enough to stand up, especially if you get a DD and a cruiser or 2 going to one flank. Oh yeah, go with them. Be their battleship. Support your team when they break up like that. But again, just the one guy going to one side and then 11 going the other side, 10 going the other side. Unfortunately, you're going to have to be the other guy to go that way. But yes, go with your teammates. And support your teammates too. That's the biggest thing you can do as well. Be their tank, shoot the enemies that's shooting them, and just be a good, proper battleship for them. So, once you decided what side you're going to, oh, by the way, at the beginning too, I don't mean just like sit there completely still. Just crank it to half speed and, kind of take a guesstimation of where you think the team is going to go, or if you think the players that your support are going to go. Get your ship pointed that direction. And if they flip around and run full speed to the other cap, then you can flip around and go out to the other cap too. But once you start to go on that side, first off, opening shots, unless you are spotted by a DD or a CV and they're not going to exit your detection range anytime soon, don't take any opening shots. Why? You're in a battleship that's probably designed for brawling, if you're taking the ones that I've listed, and you're probably not going to have that great of an accuracy on your guns, and you might get, like 5,000 damage if you're lucky. Now, if the guy's selling broadside to you and you've got a really good feeling about it, yes, take the shot. But if it's like on the edge of your range, they're selling out or they're being nice and tricky with their speed and their rudder, just save yourself some damage, because again, you're going to get spotted and you get targeted quite early. So, second off, once you get to your flank, the DD dies. Not your DD, the enemy DD. Kill him. Murder. Get him dead. The DD will be the most annoying pain in your side if you let that man live. Kill him. He spots for the enemy team. He's got torpedoes that he can throw at you. He needs to go down first. And he's probably got Daka Daka as well on his ship. He needs to perish. Focus the DD first. I know the battleship and the cruisers are very tempting targets, but the DD needs to die first. Once he's dead, you've got a lot of wiggle room as a battleship. Most of these battleships, too, that I've mentioned, they have hydro. For the love of God, use hydroacoustic search. Don't be the guy that has hydroacoustic search that literally shows you where the torpedoes are at on your side. I'm sorry, on your near your ship, in the radius around your ship of its range, and eat torpedoes and die. Don't be that guy. Use the consumable for what it's good at doing. Now, once you've gotten done with the destroyers, then focus on the cruisers, because probably the cruisers are blind now that you've sunk their destroyer. But when you're firing, of course, the cruisers can still see you, and most of them have high DPM. So murder them. Get their damage per minute out of the match. Focus on them next. Your secondaries, if you've taken one of the ships that I've mentioned, especially the German ones, will probably ruin their day. They can pin 32 millimeters of armor. Most cruisers have up to 30-ish millimeters of armor at this tier, depending upon what you're fighting, but they can most of them fall victim to your never-ending wave of secondary firepower, and of course your main battery guns too. Now when it comes time to push up, again, if you're on a side with a lot of island cover, hop island to island, make use of that cover, and try to make sure that you're not showing your broadside to the enemy team. Be very aware of your surroundings. Also, if you can help it, try to keep everything on one side of your ship. That means go wide on the flank, or just make sure that if you're showing your side to another side of the map that your team has control of it. You don't want to get put into a crossfire situation. When you have all the enemy ships on one side of your ship, you can angle your armor to them appropriately. That way, most of the AP shells are bouncing off of your ship. Also, make sure to manage your damage con and heals quite well. My general rule is 2 fires above 50%, I'll let the fires burn. 2 fires below 50%, I'll damage con it. And make sure you balance that with your heal. You don't want to, pop a damage con on a single fire and then instantly repair it, because you just wasted a heal at that point. If it's a fire or 2 above 50%, again, I'll pop the heal. The heal will take care of the damage that the fire's applying to my ship. That way, you don't just pop damage con and then for 2 fires, and then the next salvo has 3 fires going on your ship. So I can just make sure you do a good job of balancing that. That'll get your ship going for a much longer way. Also, make sure, again, tank for your team. Make sure you are doing your job as a battleship, tanking for your team. Don't hide behind the islands. The islands are there for you to move up. Move up. Don't move and stop. Move up with and tank for your team. And hopefully they'll be there for you, but that's, of course, something else today. So finally, after you deal with the cruisers at the cap and get their DPM out of action, it's time for your reward. It's time to go after the battleships. At this point, too, if you've done a good job and your team is somewhat competent, they should be alive, and now it's an unfair fight. It's you and your cruisers and your DDs hopefully still alive against the enemy's battleships, and it's time for you to reap your reward of, farming the ever-loving crap out of that battleship. So again, how do you approach the enemy battleship? Well, depends on what it is. You got to learn the armor schemes of the battleships you're going to be facing. Something like the Yami, go for their cheek. If it's something like, a G-Care, something that you're in, aim for their upper armor above their main armor belt, because it's thick there, but it's not thick enough to keep your shells out of it, and you'll get yourself some nice damage there. Typically, if they're staying angled to you, you got your secondaries going. The secondaries will be pitting their superstructure and starting fires. It's not shameful to load HG if they're just going to stick bow into you and try to tank like that. And also, if you can, avoid the ram. What I typically do is when I'm approaching an enemy ship, I angle my armored to the point to where I know that I'm probably going to bounce most of the shells coming in at me. And if they come towards me, I'll sail slightly out to them, and I'll play a clip in a training room or something so I can get a real clean demonstration of this for you guys here. And then when I'm about 2 kilometers away, I'll throw my rudder fully into their ship. That way, if they try to turn into me, typically they'll miss the ram and I'll blap their broadside and sail away. Also, don't keep turning if you do have a drive-by. Just sail in a straight line after that. Well, not to the rest of the enemy team, but don't keep turning and trying to get in a turn fight with them. When you turn, more of your ship's exposed and your ship's rolling at that point, and they can sometimes, depending upon how wonky the geometry wants to be, get to your citadel and ruin your day. So that's some general tips and tricks with how to brawl. So how to deal with submarines and CVs? Pray. I have a full guide on how to deal with submarines here if you want to check that out. I go into detail about their stats and stuff, and when you can't spot them, and how best to sink them. CVs, pray, shout. Hopefully your cruisers are around you. Again, the more friendlies you keep alive by being a good battleship, the more help you'll have staying alive. I do typically keep the fighter consumable on most of these ships because it's really the only way you can for sure shoot down some planes or discourage them from attacking you. But if CV has a mind that you're his, there's unfortunately not much you can do about it. Do try to use the islands. The islands will throw off the planes, arming range and reticle. But other than that, pray. But anyway, guys, this was some general tips and tricks on how to brawl in 2023. Let me know in the comments down below any ones that I might have left out here. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. We're way to 50,000 subs, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Hope you guys have a wonderful Wednesday and a wonderful rest of your week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.